Hello, my name is Trip Starlake, and I really like reading sci-fi fantasy books. What better way of getting even more and more deep into sci-fi and fantasy that's popular with people by reading the Hugo Award nominees for 2023. I thought I just know. There's many different sci-fi and fantasy awards, honestly, and I could have picked any of them, but I thought the Hugo Award, since it's voted on, like it's a vote by the World Science Fiction Convention members, but like anyone could be a member of this convention, and a lot of people, like I think they just some people will just buy the ticket so they can vote in the Hugo Awards. I think that's the case. I could be wrong. I haven't done that much research, just a little bit. But yeah, so there's different categories. There's a different category for the Hugo Awards, but I just decided to read Best Novel for this year. So this video is structured in like 3 parts. The first is me blind reacting to the nomination announcements. Who are the finalists for the Hugo Award Best Novel. I kind of go through the whole thing, but I'm only going to be reading the best novels, so I guess I'll highlight that the most. Then I will go through my individual rankings on each of the books that have been nominated. There's 6 of them. And then afterwards, I'm going to talk about my final thoughts, the themes that I found through all the books, if there's anything that can be gleaned from that, and also what my choice is, but as what I also want to take into account what I think will win from an objective perspective. So yes, please enjoy this video. Thank you very much. If you enjoy it, consider subscribing and liking the video or commenting or anything like that if you want to. Thanks. Continue on. Enjoy. So we're on the website now. I'm going to scroll down and we'll see if I'm going to read all the nominations in time for the awards or not. Wait, so where do I click? Oh, the full finals on the 2023 Hugo Awards page. Okay. Wow, there's 1,847 valid nominated ballots. Only 4 paper ballots. Good, okay, so best novel. Ooh, oh, there's a bunch. Okay. The Daughter of Dr. Moreau. I was not expecting that. The Kaiju Preservation Society. Oh my god, I'm reading that now, thank goodness. Legends and Lattes, which I've read. Nona the Ninth. Nettle and Bone. And The Spare Man. I thought that Babel would be nominated, and it wasn't. I think, okay, I don't know if it's because I don't want to say like it just wasn't nominated, but it's like more of a literary fiction than like a sci-fi or fantasy novel, and perhaps that's why it wasn't nominated. I'm hoping that's why, and it's not like political reasons why. Oh my god, I read Babel with the expectations that it would be on this list, and it's not. Okay, well anyway, most of these are books that I could get through before October, except Nona the Ninth is like the 3rd in a series, right? All right, I have a TBR already made. Let's go. All right, so first nomination that I'm reading for the challenge anyway, that I didn't read before, is The Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi. The book is about, it's kind of like Jurassic Park, but like not very serious, I guess. So it's a little like on topic, like COVID has come and the main character Jamie is stuck as like a food delivery person, but then he starts delivering food to this person that he used to know from college who works for what is called an animal rights organization. One thing leads to another, and Jamie gets an open position on Tom, his acquaintance's team, and then they go and figure out the mystery of the world, which is actually that there are 2 worlds. It's an alternate dimension where there's just these giant creatures called Kaiju, or they call them Kaiju. Then they roam around and they work to study them, preserve them, and prevent them from entering into Earth. And that's all I'll say as a summary, because if that interests you, then you should just go read it, because honestly this book is short. It's a short little fun summer read, I think. Like it's a perfect like I'm gonna be on an airplane for 3 hours and need something to read type of book. The Scalzi himself writes at the very end of the book that the book is like a pop song. Like it's not a really deep book. It is making some statements, but more than anything, it's just fun. It's just a fun book, and I found myself like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, nodding along with the plot. Yeah, it really did. Like, I really mean it when I say it's like a summer book. Like, it reminded me of like the summer action movies that come out every year. It's not that deep. Things just kind of happen for convenience's sake, but it kept me entertained for like the entire time I was reading it, and I think that's all Scalzi wanted out of this book too. It's a fun story for the sake of being entertaining. Yeah, the concepts were fun and the humor was wonderful, but yeah, I don't think it's not. It is making statements on capitalism and society, I suppose, in the years of 2020 and some of 2021, I think. But it's nothing that deep. It's nothing to like really reflect on. It's more so just a fun story, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I guess I didn't like. I don't feel like I learned anything from the book. I think I just had a good time, which is good. We do need books like that too. I don't think the book will change your life or anything, but it might make you feel a little bit better about your day when you finish it. Anyway, moving on. So, I just finished The Spare Man by Mary Robinette Kowal today. How should I describe this book? So, if anyone has seen the movie The Thin Man, it's like a 1930s comedy mystery, kind of. It's like that, but in space, kind of. Mostly, yeah. So it involves Tesla Crane. She is an inventor and an heiress, so she's like a billionaire. She's on her honeymoon, and she's on this weird, very strange cruise ship. It's a cruise spaceship, to be more specific. Now, she is traveling with a disguise because she doesn't want people to know, like, that it's her, because she just wants to have her honeymoon incognito. But this doesn't really last all that long because someone is murdered. And her spouse, her newly wed husband, is framed for the crime. Basically, Tesla has to go and defend her husband, try to figure out who did it, and then, you know, the story progresses from that point. To be real, I feel a little bit bad saying this, but this is like the okayest book I think I have read in a very long time. There are things I thought that were interesting, but there were aspects of the plot that just didn't really work for me, or they just didn't hit very well. At least I wasn't that interested in it. So I really like that this is like not a pure sci-fi or like a pure fantasy nomination. This is more of a mystery with sci-fi elements. I mean, they are on a cruise ship in space, but I mean, otherwise there were times when you could barely tell that it was just your normal 1930s cruise ship. So, gosh, I thought that would be really cool. I also think Tesla herself is disabled and she has PTSD, and I think that the book has pretty decent disability representation for that. She has a little Westie, as you can see on the cover. Her name is Gimlet, and she follows Tesla around as she's like a support dog, a working dog. And I thought that was really cute too. Gimlet is a very cute dog. But I think that's where like the things that I really liked about the book kind of ends. The plot was okay. It was good enough to keep reading the book. Like, it was like, well, yeah, if I was on like I said before for like the Kaiju Preservation Society, like, yeah, if I was reading this on an airplane, it would be fine because it's not bad. It's interesting enough, and the prose is perfectly good, but there just really wasn't any points where I was wowed by what was happening in the plot, or honestly super intrigued into who the culprit was. I feel like because it's a mystery novel, I should be at least a little bit curious as to who did it, who done it. But ultimately, I just wasn't because of the pacing. There's a lot of times where Tesla will go somewhere and then there's like, she's just talked to someone and nothing really happens. The security on board the cruise ship was just like laughably incompetent to the point of disbelief. It just, I don't know. I can't imagine they were that bad. And I honestly liked the idea of like a newlywed couple on a cruise ship having to solve a mystery, but Tesla's husband, Shaw, doesn't have that much of a character. He's kind of out of the story for a lot of it, which is cool to show a disabled character having a lot of like, you know, like, just because she's disabled, she can do all sorts of things, and that's totally cool. I liked that, but it was weird because, like, they kept involving him in the plot, and he was just, like, kind of there. He's just kind of there. Actually, I think my main problem with the entire story is that the book itself is okay, and I would have liked the plot a lot more if Tesla hadn't turned into kind of a Karen one too many times for me. I feel like sometimes she was justified in her outrage to the people who she was being a Karen to, but sometimes it was like, girl, calm down. I get that things are bad, but calm down. Alas, I really wish Tesla hadn't been a Karen, but it is what it is. So, yeah, moving on. Okay, so the only book that I had to actually read 3 books for within the Hugo nominations was Nona the Ninth by Tamsyn Muir. This is the 3rd book in the Locked Tomb series, and I had not read the other 2 books yet. I had always wanted to read Gideon the Ninth and Harrow the Ninth, but I just hadn't gotten around to it. So really this entire video was hinging on me liking Gideon the Ninth, because if I didn't, there was no way I was going to want to read Nona the Ninth, the 3rd book in the series. Luckily, I loved Gideon. I thought Harrow the Ninth was just a wonderfully crafted book, beautifully confusing, is what I would put it as. And Nona the Ninth is quite different than its other 2 books. It involves Nona, obviously. Nona is the main character. She is living in this world that is falling to pieces. This is a really hard book to describe because describing too many things may be spoilers. Say if you've read Gideon but you haven't read Harrow yet, that could be spoilers. So basically this book revolves Nona. Nona had not been mentioned ever before in the 2 previous books. She is a newly born, fully adult person. She has woken up 6 months ago in a stranger's body, and she is learning about how to do things. There is a cute dog named Noodle in it, so that gives it a lot of points. It has these comfy found family feelings while having extremely dark, apocalyptic, overarching themes. It's a very confusing book, but if you loved the Locked Tomb series, you're probably going to at least enjoy this one, even if you don't love it. I think you'll enjoy it as it is leading up to what I think is the final book in the series. Nona as a nomination makes sense because it is the Locked Tomb series as a whole is like one of the most popular sci-fi fantasy series I think right now, and I think Nona does a really good job. It's not as strong as the other 2 books in the series for actually quite obvious purposes, but you'd have to read the book for me to tell you, and I don't want to reveal too much. But yeah, reading the Locked Tomb series in a matter of 2 months was just a wild ride. Nona is so different than the other 2. It was actually really cool to experience the Locked Tomb series from Nona's perspective, as well as finding out what's going on outside of the scope of Gideon and Harrow the Ninth. I know that this was only going to be the first part of Alecto when it was first written, but I actually think that it was kind of cool. It was very sweet. 2 of the main characters in this book are some of my favorite characters in the entire series, so I really liked seeing them here in this book again. Yeah, it's just a really fun yet intense story about love, found family, dogs, which sounds very weird knowing this is a sci-fi fantasy with like heavy necromantic themes, but it really is a story about love, found family, and dogs. Ultimately, I didn't love it as much as the first 2 in the series, as I felt that some parts, more so in the first half of the book, could have been like condensed down further, but it was still a good time. It was a good time. Okay, so next I read Nettle and Bone by Kingfisher. This was a nice little book. It's just under 250 pages, I think. Yeah. It's about Mara, a princess of a harbor kingdom. Her sister has been married off to the king of the northern kingdom for political purposes, and Mara has realized that the king he'll become the king, as expected. Except Mara's not okay with this, and she decides that she needs to kill the prince, save her sister. So she travels south to find a dust wife. Mara is told that they may be able to help her. She is given a quest to build a dog out of bones, sew a cloak out of nettles, and capture moonlight in a jar. If she can manage these tasks, will she get to what she needs to kill the prince and save her sister? This book felt like a very true dark fairy tale in the first half of the book, and it just kind of got lighter as the story went on. I wouldn't say it gets silly, and there's like still horror elements throughout the book, but it just gets less dark as the story goes on. I think this book does a very interesting job of showing the harrowing realities of childbirth, especially in the Middle Ages. I think that it's just like you could relate to that no matter what age you live in, though, when reading it. It also shows the dark realities of the world that Mara lives in. Like, magic is very much like a rampant thing, but like I said, as you get further into the book, it just becomes less of an issue. Like, there's still lots of magic going around, and magic is used really in neat, cool, interesting ways that I haven't really seen elsewhere. It's just less dark feeling. It just feels like, well, this is just the world. This is just how it is. It doesn't feel positive or negative. It just is. I also think that it might be because I thought the plot meandered in the last 25%, especially just the last 25%. It just feels like, okay, we know what's going to happen. We know, like, what Mara needs to do. We need to just get there, because there's just a lot of scenes that didn't add anything to the plot. They were just, like, in the book, which is strange to say, considering that it is just not a very large book at all. Regardless of how I felt about the book's, like, last 25%, I think it objectively has some quite interesting conversations about choosing your own path in life, not putting up with injustices, and finding power when you don't feel like you were the most powerful person. Like, you can't be that powerful person. I found the prose to be highly engaging, and I constantly wanted to return to the book to find out what happened next. I think Kingfisher is an extremely talented author. This was my first time reading from her, and I would love to read more from this author. I overall had quite a nice time. Alright, so last I read The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. There wasn't any reason why this was last, it just happened to be the last one I got my hands on. So, The Daughter of Dr. Moreau it's a 19th century Mexico retelling of H.G. Wells' The Island of Dr. Moreau. It's like part historical drama, part sci-fi book reimagining. It involves Carlota, the daughter of Dr. Moreau, and Montgomery Lawton, the overseer of the facility that Dr. Moreau is running. If you're unfamiliar with the original story, Dr. Moreau is a scientist, and he is trying to make hybrid humans through means of vivisection on animals, and then is like making humanoid beings or just humans out of animals. That's like the entire original story. That is what is also happening as well in this story. Carlota grew up on the Yucatan Peninsula, so she is far away from largely the conflict of Mexico, and she doesn't know much of the world. And the other perspective in the book is Montgomery Lawton, who is the overseer of the book, and he has a tragic past to tell, and he has a drinking problem. So all of them are pretty much living like in this little facility, like this little tiny estate, doing their own thing, having the experiments progress, having these hybrid humans, like living among these hybrid humans, like without problem, until the benefactor of the entire facility, his son comes to the facility and just starts to cause havoc on the peace that used to prevail in the society, the little tiny society that they all lived in. So ultimately, I thought this book was deeply fine. I thought that it was going to be a really interesting retelling of H.G. Wells' classic, because I thought that it could explore power dynamics in like a Mexican taken over like by colonialism and imperialism type of setting, and I thought that would be really cool. But however, it was a really slow book, like a really slow book. And I appreciated that it was essentially a sci-fi story with a historical Mexican background. That's probably my favorite aspect of the whole book. However, I just thought it was really slow, and the impact I think the story was trying to make just did not hit for me. There were conversations about the power dynamics between Carlota and the people around her, about Montgomery and the people around him. There's some found family vibes, and I think it all could have been really impactful, but the drama is not heightened at any point in the story, just as kind of like things happen as you expect them to happen. with any kind of drama that's like this, has been portrayed in this way at the beginning of the story. I don't mind Carlotta and Montgomery. I think they're perfectly fine characters, but they get fleshed out in these extremely lengthy internal monologues that got really boring in my opinion and didn't do a ton for the overall story. I really wanted to find out more about other aspects of the plot too, and I think the book just kind of glosses over that. So while I don't think this book is bad by any means, the author's clearly a talented writer. It just wasn't for me. Like, there was just this lack of tension that I thought was surprising and not in a good way. It was sadly disappointing to me. All right, this is my third time recording my impression of Legends and Lattes because technical issues. Legends and Lattes is probably the least surprising to be nominated for the Hugo nominees this year. It took the book world by storm. It already has like 100,000 reviews on Goodreads. People really seem to be liking it, or at the very least picking it up. So this book is about the retired mercenary adventurer Viv. She is a newly retired orc barbarian ready for something new. She has decided to open up a coffee shop of her own in a small city after falling in love with the bean juice on her travels. The book covers her foray into starting a business, getting like coworkers, and all the things that come with starting up any kind of a business. She meets a lot of very cute and like lovable friends along the way, and the book really covers a lot of realistic but simple topics like the cost of leaving your previous life behind, and evaluating your own self-worth, and just because you change your mind on things or you decide to go in a new direction in your life doesn't make you less of a person, stuff like that. So yeah, this book is very lovely. It is the perfect cozy fantasy to start in the genre, I think. Viv and Tandri are so lovable, and Cal and Thimble are my favorite. The conflict and plot progression aren't groundbreaking or even action-packed, but it's realistic with its emphasis on starting out on your new dream and finding a new place in the world. I think a nice theme of this book is like you can choose your own fate. If how your life was previously just isn't for you anymore, you can change that, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think a lot of people can relate to the concerns that Viv has throughout the book, but honestly, it's nothing that crazy. Like, nothing super crazy happens in this book. It's just very simple, and it's nice to read. The prose is perfectly fine to read. I would not say that the prose was super impressive or anything, but I actually think that it is so simple that anyone can read this book, and I think that's great. So yeah, like I said just a minute ago, very unsurprised to see it here, knowing that the Hugo nominations are user submitted. Now that I have reviewed all of the books and with my own opinion, let's go over and look at what I thought about these book nominations as a whole. So, now that I've reviewed a little bit all of the books, I want to talk a little bit more about the Hugo Awards, the themes, and other stuff. So as you could probably see in my blind reaction to the Hugo Awards announcements, the nominee announcements, I was very surprised that certain books were not on there. I had read Babel by R.F. Kuang, and I thought for sure it would be nominated for the Hugo Award. I actually keep track of all of like the sci-fi fantasy awards like nominations for the entirety of 2022. I've done it for 2 years now, and I plan to keep doing it because I find it fascinating. And by and large, now I believe all of the nominations are in for sci-fi and fantasy style and adjacent awards. And by and large, Babel is the most nominated book and has already won 2. It has won the Locus Award and the Nebula Award. So I don't know. That was surprising to me. But what we got was also a bit surprising to me. Like, I thought Legends and Lattes was a good book, but I didn't think it was a great book. So I didn't think that it would be nominated because it wasn't doing anything crazy or new. But I also think that in this post-Panini life that we're living, based on these nominations, I kind of think that what people want to read has kind of changed drastically. And I think more readers are seeking something like a comfy world to go to. A comfy world, or something comforting, or something that isn't going to make you feel all of the pressures of the world that we currently live in, something that could make you feel a bit different, but in a comfy, fluffy way rather than a, oh wow, that was a book that made me really reflect on things. And, you know, that sort of deep reflection that I think sci-fi and fantasy can really do with its setting. I mean, any genre of fiction can do that, but I think with the Hugo Awards, I feel like that's should be more prevalent, you know? So, like, with the actual nominees, the Kaiju Preservation Society, the Spare Man, Legends and Lattes, and even Nettle and Bone and Nona to a certain extent, they're all just comfy. They're just comfier reads. Like, maybe not everything within the book is, in fact, comfy. Like, Nona and Nettle and Bone are quite dark, but they still have, like, that found family vibe to it. And actually, now that I said found family, I think found family is a pretty big vibe throughout most of these books. I would say all of them, except for the Spare Man, I suppose, have very strong, like, found family, or like the people that you vibe with, that you just click with, that make you feel comfortable with being yourself and make you be the best person that you want to be. I think that is a strong theme throughout these books, and I actually think that's quite nice. Honestly, I personally found The Spare Man and The Daughter of Dr. Moreau to be quite disappointing. I can see why they're here, especially The Daughter of Dr. Moreau, but it is an interesting genre. It's just the rise of cozy genre, I think. Like, Legends and Lattes is absolutely, like, the pioneer, or not the pioneer, but is, like, the first big book of cozy fantasy. I think The Spare Man is the first sci-fi cozy mystery I've ever read. I would say the Kaiju Preservation Society is a low-stakes, big fun type of book. Nettle and Bone has these horror elements, but it still has a sense of being a little comfy and a little silly. The same thing with Nona and the Ninth. Nona and the Ninth can get really dark, but it's still really funny. Now, the Daughter of Dr. Moreau is a little bit of an outlier in here, where I think that its historical setting and its conversations on imperialism and colonialism are all extremely important, and I think some of it is very comfy with how slow the plot is. Like, you're really just experiencing how these characters live their lives, but it doesn't have quite as many comfy vibes purely because of, like, the content. I think just, like, what's going on in the backdrop of the world does not lead to being all that comfy. Which is okay. I still think that it was an important book to have read. I'm not mad that I read it, I just didn't like it that much. I wouldn't say the only reason is because it was a pretty slow going book, but I would say the biggest reason for me is that it was so slow. I can read slow books, but it was just really slow for me, personally. So yeah, thinking about this, I don't know. I really wonder if we're going to see more comfy fantasy, maybe comfy sci-fi. So I know that last year, the best novella, the novella that won the best novella in 2022 was A Psalm for the Wild, built by Becky Chambers, and that really is that comfy sci-fi that's, like, fun to experience. And while I don't know, I didn't read the novellas this year. I just don't have time, honestly. I really don't know how comfy they are. I know that the Nevo series, she was nominated for the Into the Riverlands book. In that series, if you know it, you know it. I thought that it's not comfy, but it's slower, and you can take it at your own pace type of story. I just think that's kind of what people want to read right now. And I don't even think that's a bad thing. I think it's just we need a place to go to that's comfy and cozy, and that is in, you know, Viv's cafe in Legends and Lattes, or maybe it's watching crazy kaijus do their own thing in alternate universe Earth in Kaiju Preservation Society. Or maybe you really like things to be a bit creepier, so you want to watch a girl put together a dog made of entirely bones and thread in Nettle and Bone. I don't think it's bad. I actually am extremely curious to see what will get nominated next year. Will the trend continue for cozy fantasy, or will we go back to different kinds of nominations? And by different kinds, I think the books that got nominated in 2022, I don't think most of them were not, like, super duper comfy. I think you could make an argument for A Light from Uncommon Stars being kind of a comfy book, but it wasn't. I cried when I read that. It wasn't that comfy. And She Who Became the Sun is much more hard-hitting. I really don't know about the others, though. I mean, A Desolation Called Peace is one of my favorite books, yes, but I wouldn't say that was comfy. So I wonder if it's just this year, lots of people wrote books during the pandemic and then they were published and they're all like, this is the world I want to be in, or if that's just the trend now. I don't know. We'll see, I suppose, next year. So for speculation on who I think is going to win, if it were up to me, where I think they all have something strong to bring to the table. Actually, I think they do, even if they weren't all my own cup of tea. I think from my own personal reading perspective, and this is absolutely skewed by the fact that I read the entire what is available of the Locked Tomb series in 2 months, Nona the Ninth really was such a joy to read. It really hit me, and I think Tamsyn Muir is a very talented author. And the Locked Tomb series in itself, at least the first book, I feel like even if you don't read the rest of the series, I think even just the first book is worth reading, which is not very good because I'm trying to make an argument for Nona the Ninth, but I think that was the best book for me. It's a short follow-up with Legends and Lattes. Legends and Lattes I read at the perfect time because it was exactly what I needed. I needed something soothing in a world where it was low stakes and just nice to read, and the problems were all manageable. I think a lot of us are in that mindset as I am, and I think that's why it's here. Honestly, I think Legends of Lattes might win. I think it might win the Hugo Award. It made such a big splash last year and this year. I think it's a great way to get into reading if you aren't into reading. It's not a very long book. It's easy to read. It's fun to read. The stakes are fun. All the characters are super lovable. Yeah, I actually think Legends and Lattes might win. But if people are thinking slightly more critically and not going on their gut, I don't know. Maybe Nettle and Bone? Maybe? That book is also written fantastically. Maybe? I think I would only be surprised if the Spare Man won, because I just did not. I just don't. I don't know what that book was really trying to say other than having good. Well, I don't know. Maybe. Never mind. I take that back. Maybe. I mean, it does have pretty reasonable disability representation, I think, anyway. I'm not someone who is disabled, so I can't speak, but I haven't read much from the perspective of a disabled person, so I thought that was fascinating. So maybe. Never mind. Everybody has a chance. Everybody has a chance. So yeah, I think that's enough pontificating. I think that's enough speculation. I don't know. I probably won't make another video to be like, this is the winner, but I'll probably make a small comment on it in a later video in any case. Yeah, this was actually really fun to do, and I plan to do it again next year. It's very interesting to see the nominations, what people that read sci-fi and fantasy like I do, these are their preferences right now in the reading sphere. This is what they thought were the best to come out. And tracking stats and awards and numbers and things like that are always my things, which is why I have my own separate sci-fi fantasy award tracker that I keep on the side. Did you read all of these books? What did you find to be the best book out of all of these? Out of these 6 nominations? Which one was the worst one? And do you think that your favorite will win or not? What do you think? I want to know. I want to know. I hope that, maybe you didn't get anything out of this, but maybe you found it entertaining like I found it entertaining to read and make this video. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. I will have more fun, what do we call it? TBR content in the future. So I hope that maybe you'll subscribe and stick around for that. Have a wonderful day, evening, and morning, wherever you are. And goodbye.